Good morning. I think we're all ready. This is a special board meeting, notice of which was duly provided to board members as required by our bylaws, and under those bylaws, the matters under consideration today are limited to only those matters stated in the notice. Today we'll hear from committees on the contracts requiring a two-thirds board vote that was postponed at our March board meeting. Mr. Morello, I presume there are no public speakers? And I chair the March Transit Committee, and I report the following. There are 3 procurement actions from March that require a vote. There are 3 competitive procurements, 2 for New York City Transit, totaling $641.7 million, and 1 RFP authorizing resolution for the MTA Bus Company. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them. Is there a second? Any questions or comments? Mr. Saul.
I don't have a problem with the substance of the Canarsie Tunnel, the Judlow contract. I think it's fine. It's a low bid contract and it's great. I do have a problem, though, where there is still disputed, I'm going to use the word extras, maybe not extras, but bills that haven't been settled due to us taking over the Cortland project from the Port Authority. And I think I understand the complexities of it, a problem that we inherited, I mean the MTA family inherited from the Port Authority because the design and so forth wasn't satisfactory to complete the project. However, here we're going into a major contract for, what, $400 million contract with the same company where there's still disputed items that are out there. And to me, it makes no sense. I mean, before I award this contract for all this new business on a major project, I would be sure that the old items and the old business is settled up. And I read through all the stuff, the letter that Ronnie had here in the package that Darlene sent out, but to me, this doesn't answer the problem. We still have disputed items out there that amount to, I understand, a substantial amount of money. And I can't see going forward and awarding a contract till this thing's cleaned up satisfactorily.
So if I may, we have been working with Judlow on the Cortland, and I'm going to keep them separate, on trying to resolve the commercial issues on the Cortland project. You're right in saying that they're complicated. Some of them start from the originating design and the problems that we had in taking over the work from the Port Authority. But we also don't want to delay awarding the Canarsie project and feel like, you know, every day that goes by, we do want to work as expeditiously as possible to try to resolve the pre-existing Cortland issues, but also to move forward with the Canarsie and the importance of that project.
I understand that, Ronnie, and I understand that you want to move forward, but still, as a business person, I don't think you move forward with something until you clean up your old issues. And there's no better time to clean it up when you're getting ready to award this contract. So I don't know how long it takes to clean these things up, but for me, I would not award this contract till we have a satisfactory resolution of pre-existing conditions.
Of course.
Mr. Chairman, I respect my colleagues' comments, but I recall hearing in a previous board meeting, and I think it was you who actually discussed it, is that a lot of the problems with that project has to do with unresolved issues with the Port Authority. And while I've raised questions about the Canarsie project, I'm in support of voting to approve it today. And the reason being is that there are safety issues involving this Canarsie project. And when it comes to safety, that's first and foremost, and you can't put anyone at risk. It's going to take months if we have to negotiate with the Port Authority. And I don't think the Canarsie project has months to wait. We probably have disputed items on many, many, many contracts with contractors. And Cortland is just not one in a vacuum. So I respect my colleagues, the concerns he's raised, and I agree with him that we need to find an expeditious way of resolving them. And I would support him in finding expeditious ways and holding everyone's feet to the fire. But I'm not going to sacrifice the Canarsie project for something that is not necessarily Judlow's fault alone. It's complicated as you laid out. I don't understand all the intricacies because I'm not familiar with the total history of this. But it also involves another bureaucracy. And we all know how bureaucracies, how quickly, or not quickly, they move. So I think we need to take a vote today and move this project along because it's a safety issue as much as it is anything else. And we need to get it going. We need to get it completed. So I would support us moving forward with this project, and I hope the board will support approving this project. And Mr. Saul has my commitment as chair of the Finance Committee that I will work with him, Ronnie, the acting chair, to resolve this Cortland project in a very expeditious manner. But I think they should be separate and apart from each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Albert.
From the many meetings and discussions we've had on this issue, one of the factors that gave Judlow the edge was the closure for 15 months versus the 18 months that the other contractors offered. I also understood there was $410,000 a day in liquidated damages for any day over 15 months where the tunnel is not opened. I didn't see it in the materials that we received. Is that still in operation?
That is still the case. I'm looking at Steve Pachaki to confirm that.
Yes, it is.
And it's in writing somewhere?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Thank you.
Let the record show, because the mic was off, it is in the contract. Mr. Saul.
Ronnie, I would like to understand what we have to do to resolve these things and what the time frame is. I mean, this is something I am not privy to. I don't have all the facts. I admit that. What's involved? How much money? What's left to settle up here? And why would this be such a difficult thing to do? I agree with Larry. We should go ahead and do the contract. That's not my problem. All I'm saying is now's the time to get a deal for the MTA. So in the end, I've been around here a long time. I know what happens with these things. And if we don't get it now, once this is done, good luck. And I can't understand why this is such a time-consuming thing to resolve this or have an understanding with Judlow that this has to be resolved, and it has to be resolved in a way that it's fair to the MTA and the state.
Let me try to address that a second, because we're conflating a few things. We have issues of this legacy project from the Port Authority, and that complicates a lot of this. We have had previous issues with a contractor, but those have been worked out to the degree that we are satisfied that they can perform on this contract, and items have been built into this contract to ensure that performance. One thing that hasn't been raised before, this is the same contractor who did the Montague tube for us. That was under budget and early. So I have every reliance in the technical folks at the MTA who have reviewed this and have come to conclude that given what the executive director has done with the contractor and given our own expectations of this, we have a reasonable assurance that this will take 15 months, which is a whole lot better than the 18 months that were originally projected. Mr. Schwartz.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask Mr. Saul's indulgence, and as well as other board members. I mean, this is a special meeting. We had to come back. All of us as board members, we serve on a volunteer basis. We have other professional responsibilities, including I. So I would ask from a time sensitivity, since this is a complicated thing, I'd be happy, Mr. Saul, to sit with you, the MTA staff, any other board member, to go through. We'll schedule a meeting next week if you want, the earliest as possible, and sit down and go through these things and get them resolved. And hopefully we can maybe have a plan of action prior to the next board meeting. So I just ask from a timing sense, since I think it'll take a long time for us to ask and answer questions on the Cortlandt Street, if we can hold this in abeyance and vote and then take it up offline.
I appreciate that, and I don't want to obstruct this thing, but I think we should, and I appreciate Larry as chairman of the Finance Committee, and obviously, you know, your authority here, that means a lot. But I do think that the senior staff should be put on notice here that personally, and I think the board as fiduciaries, expect that this thing is going to be resolved in a way that takes into account the MTA's finances and responsibilities as a state operation.
I think that message has been clearly delivered. Appreciate that.
And I think we're all saying the same thing, Mr. Saul. The question has been called. All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. That concludes New York City Transit. Next is Metro North and Mr. Pally.
Mr. Chairman, I have to leave. I just want to put one thing on the record. Listen, now that the vote is over and we can move forward on the Canarsie project, I just want to make it clear for the record, and I say this as chair of the Finance Committee. I expect this project to be completed in 15 months, as all the board expects it, as I believe you expect it to be completed in 15 months. And I want to make sure that Judd Lowe and everybody else that's going to be involved in this project understands that it will not be tolerated or accepted to be 15 months in one day. And and if it happens to go over the 15 months, I'll do everything within my authority and power to make sure that Judd Lowe is disqualified from any future MTA work, and I won't allow the Finance Committee to take up Judd Lowe projects. They made a commitment. I'm not living in the world of excuses. I'm going to carefully monitor any change orders that come across, because I got commitments on a capping of that. The old days of how these contracts got awarded and how projects went over budget and late are over. That's why we're going to move to design build. But I'm going to hold Judd Lowe accountable. I'm holding everyone accountable. There was a commitment made. I really don't. The $400,000 fines are nice. They're much, much greater. I compliment you for that. But the big stick is going to be to tell Judd Lowe, you're not going to do business any longer. Because as far as I'm concerned, if it's a day over 15 days, that means they lied. And lying is unacceptable. Thank you.
Next is Metro North. Mr. Pally will deliver the report.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. The Metro North Committee met, and I report the following. There was one procurement item for board approval today. There is one competitive procurement in the amount of $24.5 million. The committee recommends this procurement, and I move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on it? Hearing, Mr. Saul.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I asked for a number, and I wanted to know what Alstom's proposal was, the cost, their cost proposal. Do we have that number, Kathy?
Yeah, well, we do. My preference would be, since this is an RFP where cost is only one element of the factors that were considered by the selection committee in making the award. I don't have my capital engineering staff here today. We would prefer to pull this item from consideration this month, get you the information with respect to the totality of the reasons why we selected this particular contract.
That should be in the staff summary,
yeah,
you know?
I think typically we don't
I understand.
have that. Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
Look,
No, I
as a
understand.
fiduciary, when you send in these proposals, Kathy, and look, I've known you a long time. I think you have to be careful that if there's another proposal in the RFP, the amount should be in the handbook.
So our preference would be, if it's okay with the members of the Metro North Committee here today.
I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better? Is that better? Okay. Our preference would be to pull it from this month's submission, and we will, in the course of the next couple of weeks before the April board meeting, get you and the rest of the committee information with respect to the relative merits of the two proposals so that we can bring this back in April and vote on it then.
Yeah, because the one question I have, Alstom has been a bidder on a lot of these projects for us, and I don't know the record of them being successful, but I think they're an important quality operation, large international company, and I have nothing, I'm not in favor of Alstom. I have no ties to the company or anything, but I want to make sure that their bids are fairly handled here.
No, I understand. I mean, this is an RFP, so there are a number of different elements that went into the final recommendation, but I think it's our responsibility to walk you through those and make you comfortable that Ansaldo is the right selection, and we will do that over the course of the next couple of weeks.
Mr. Pally, is it acceptable to you to pull this item?
Move to table the item, then?
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? All in favor of tabling this item?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? The item is tabled. Mr. Pally will also present Long Island Railroad.
There is one procurement item for the Long Island Railroad requiring board vote today. There is one competitive procurement for the Long Island Railroad for $326,000. The committee recommends this procurement, and I move it.
Is there a second? I presume there's a second.
Yes.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposing? Abstaining? The item carries.
That's
Finally, thank you, Mr. Pally. Finally, Bridges and Tunnels Committee and Mr. Merdler.
Mr. Chairman, the Bridges and Tunnels Committee met, and I report the following. There is one procurement item for today's board approval. There is one competitive procurement in the amount of $82.2 million. The committee recommends this procurement, and I move it.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposing? Abstaining? The item carries. And now may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Is there a second? All in favor? Thank you. The meeting is adjourned. And thank you for your attendance and attention.
Mr. Ferrer, Mr.
Sif. It's certainly not an acceptable condition. Look, there'll be, we figure 29 trains affected. So first, we would encourage our riders to leave early or to leave late, but that rush hour is going to be very, very tough. We will be advising riders through social media, through text messaging, if they have signed up for it, and through our own website. But it's fair to say that that the condition at Penn affects everybody. Even though Amtrak owns it, we all dwell in that same place and travel over that same track. And when something bad happens like this, it will affect a lot of people. It's mostly our riders. We apologize to them for it. We're going to do the best we can to get through the situation and to keep everybody informed.
I want to ask about the elevators and escalators. I was doing some research into it. I know that the agency right now is still repairing some of the elevators and escalators that, or not repairing, but rehabbing and putting new systems into the ones that were part of the 2010-2014 capital plan. So that leaves the ones in the current capital plan, presumably years, in a couple of years before those will happen. Is there anything that the agency can do to speed these things up to make sure that people have the elevators and escalators when they need them?
We're advancing some of those projects right now. We know that the elevators, rather, at 168th Street and 181st Street have been troublesome. So we've got, for example, a resident team 24/7 there, just to make sure. Now, I was on that elevator this morning at 8:08, to be exact, and they were working fine. That's not a measure of everything we've got, but it's certainly an indication that we're on top of it, we're addressing it, and we're putting resources there to keep them in operation until such time as we can let out a capital project. But I want to warn all of you, this isn't the case of going to Home Depot and aisle 4, big elevators, get me 4 from the top shelf. This involves a lot of planning and a lot of other logistics that will advance to try to get this project done as quickly as possible.
So with the Canarsie Tunnel contract in place, ahead of the full shutdown in April, there's going to be partial closures on weekends or nights to prepare for the work. Can you elaborate on when those closures might be happening and why they need to happen?
I'm sorry, I don't think I completely understood your question.
So before the service to and through Manhattan shuts down on the L train, wouldn't there have to be some kind of temporary closures to prepare for that work? You know, either it's partial shutdowns of service in the weekend or overnights. Do you know why and when that will happen?
Not offhand, but as we do with anything, either it's a maintenance for state of good repair or an emergency repair, we will let people know, and we will let people know timely.
The Judd lab that was chosen for the Canarsie contract was behind some of the delays of the 2nd Avenue subway line. Can you talk about why riders should trust that they'll be able to make this 15-month commitment?
Well, because we got them to resolve their issues on 2nd Avenue subway, and as you know, that opened on time. They were also involved in our work to get the Montague Tunnel. My first turn as acting chairman when we had to shut that tunnel down, and it came in early and under budget. I have every reliance that that given the liquidated damage provisions in the contract that were negotiated by our team and pushed by our executive director, Ronnie Hakem, as well as keeping an eye on them, I think this will go along well, too.
In the past, the MTA has been criticized for being clunky in the procurement process. The flexibility that they've shown this time around in the Canarsie project, and even the warning from Larry Schwartz that the old days are over, do you see this as a new era for the MTA in terms of how it handles procurements?
Well, yeah, and this has been underway for quite some time. I think it's reasonable to expect us to do this quickly and to do it without delay, to do it more efficiently. Design build is something important that we embrace. So as we move virtually every one of our projects to that kind of model, it's important to look at what we've got that's been planned for a long time and advance that as well. We should be held to a very high standard, doing it quick, doing it efficiently, and doing it as inexpensively as we can with as little financial impact to the riding public as possible. Thank you.
Hello. So I have a story today about New Starts funding and the concerns from transit agencies. I'm curious, have you or Ronnie Hakem met with Elaine Chao, the new transportation secretary, or someone from Trump's team to discuss the importance of the projects in New York City?
I have had no such meeting, but I know Ronnie Hakem has. Come on up, our executive director. I'm sure she'd be happy to tell you about her meetings with.
So we were, a number of us went to Washington for the secretary's installation last week. And, well, you didn't have an opportunity to speak one-on-one with the secretary, but we did have an opportunity to speak with senior staff and the acting administrators at the FTA and the FRA, where we were able to begin the conversation about conveying the importance of our projects and our programs and what we're relying on in terms of federal funding.
Anyone else? Thank you.